It's October
29th,
2022.
Yeah.
And it's 8:02 a.m. Pacific time. There we go.
Okay. Shall I kick off then?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Good morning and welcome to this IVRPA member meeting. And I'm going to start off with a presentation. I'm going to just give you a kind of quick overview. So it'll just be in Zoom. And then after that, I'll give you an opportunity to join me inside this 3D virtual software that we use called Frame, which has got a number of different affordances for designing 3D worlds or metaverses, if you want to call them that, and also for 3D meetings. I actually have used this. Last year we did a one-day special event called WebXR Day, and we used that to host several meetings in that event. And I use it with a course I teach at a community college. It's a 360 workshop I do infrequently with a group of students. And over the last 3 years, because of COVID, I used to do this in person for 5 hours. I actually have been using, well, I started off using Zoom, and then the last 2 years, I've been using Frame as well to really augment that, because it lends itself particularly to teaching 3D photography. So I'm going to give you an overview of what I've got and what I've been doing with it, and then you can join in, and then we'll have some time for questions, and then any other discussion people want to have about the IVRPA afterwards. So I'll kick off now by sharing my screen. And this is one aspect of this I should just point out, is that because it's like basically sharing one virtual world in Zoom, which is another virtual world, they have different audio and video cameras in each system. So at this point, it'll be fine. You shouldn't get feedback. At the point when I give you the opportunity to join me in the virtual world, if you have 2 devices open, that's not good, because you'll get a feedback loop. And also, if you have your microphones open in Zoom and in Frame, you'll get a feedback loop. So the thing will be to either mute yourself in one environment or the other. So if we get any feedback, we'll pause and give people a chance to find out what's going on. I can mute you in Frame, and I think Lauren can mute people in Zoom if we have to. Okay, so that will happen at the beginning, but for the initial presentation, it should be fine. So I'll just start sharing my screen now. Let me just get my Zoom screen up. Here we go. Okay, so what you should see now is this is the IVRPA virtual campus that I developed for the WebXR Day last year. And I'm just going to zoom in and out a bit so you can see that it is a 3D environment. And as you can see, it's highly customizable. The actual environments that Frame provide, which are probably about 15 or 20 now, include this campus and a bunch of others, which I'll show you. But you can also create your own environments as well. So I'll show you some of that later. So this environment I just created, and you see it's 3D. If you were in a headset now, you would be seeing this in a virtual sort of space completely. What you'll notice here, I've actually got a 3D model of myself, which I think when I was at Foco Expo one year, somebody was offering virtual scans of your whole body. So you'll see that that is actually a 3D model entirely. I could make it dance, but I haven't succeeded in animating it properly yet, but you don't want to see that anyway. Everything in here, you know, there's a series of rooms I've set up. So this is like meeting rooms. And I put assets on the walls, as you can see, and posters on the walls and so forth. And then everything is kind of hot linked as well. So if I were to say, oh, I want to find about how to do 360, if I click on that link there, it'll take me to this pavilion here where I've got a bunch of, just moving around here now. I've got a bunch of videos, some from the IVRPA website on.
Brian,
yes.
Brian, may
Yes.
I ask a question, or we have a question time?
Yeah,
later?
yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Okay.
dip in.
My question is feasible in such environment to have a photogrammetry reconstructed 3D
Yes,
environment?
if you wait, I'll get to that. I'm
Okay,
going to show you that. Absolutely. So yeah, this is a pavilion. I've got several set up with, you know, other videos and resources. So I've got a lot of what's on the IVRPA website set up here as resources. So I'll kind of just jump in quickly so I don't spend too much time walking around here. This is a screen that leads to my 360 workshop with my students. I don't usually go in this route with them, but for people on the IVRPA, you can see this. So this link will take you to the first stage of my workshop. So this is an amphitheater, and this is, you know, the PowerPoint presentation I use. You can also have a webcam and share screen here. The one thing you can't do when you're doing Zoom and Frame at the same time is share your webcam, because it's tied up with Zoom. So I won't show you that at the moment, but I could share my screen up here. I can also go through my PowerPoint. And students, if anybody clicks on that PowerPoint, they'll get an option to expand it. Actually, I've got to turn the edit button off. You get an option to expand it and see it at a larger size. So that's that. And then there are a bunch of resources here. I've got a number of photospheres here. So you'll see if I click on a photosphere, I can completely change the environment in which this theatre is based. So there we are in the middle of New York City. Suddenly it's in the back garden in New Jersey. And then we're going to back on some desert scene somewhere. I think it's in Namibia. And then back on the Jersey Shore. So, you know, that's the kind of thing you can do with Zoom. You can put in photospheres and you can expand them either in the background, or you can actually expand them in the foreground as well, which this one isn't working at the moment. Yeah, I mean, if you actually go inside a sphere, you'll see it as well. I need to move that one around a bit so to do that. Anyway. So, you know, you can compass 360 photography quite well in here. In this course, I also do a whole section on virtual tours. So I go into the virtual tours page, and this is really like a 3D website. You know, that's what it's like, a kind of interlinked 3D website, but it's something you can actually inhabit either in a browser or in a headset. So I've got a bunch of globes here. On different themes, and there's a bunch of California, there's a bunch from New York. So if you go to the New York one, you can expand it. I can also turn off the audio if I try. I'll have to look at that. That's a 360 of the IVRPA group in Times Square in 2012 when the conference was in New York. You might recognize some of the faces. There's Carlos. Okay. Anyway, so you can do that with virtual spheres, and I demonstrate how you can, you know, do 360 photography and use these spheres. I also have audio in this somewhere, so I ought to turn that option. Here's the audio if I can find it. Oh, there it is. Yeah, to get up to that audio asset, the roof, I'd have to fly. So I'm just going to turn on my flying mode. You can see there's a lot of settings here, and it's not good to do this when you're giving a presentation. So I'll probably skip out of that for the moment. So to get out of here, I'm just going to go to the next frame and go to this one here. So this one's about documentary VR, location and photogrammetry. And the other thing you can have with Frame is within a particular frame, you can have a series of scenes. So here I've got several scenes based in this little gallery, and I can move from one to the next, to the next. And here I've got a gallery still based on the topic of documentary VR, but this is focused on photogrammetry. So to answer Marco's question, yes, you can do a lot. One of the people who actually talked at our event last year was the owner of a company called Vetronics. And if we go, actually, we can go into their lounge. I hope they've still got it set up. Yes, they do. This is a demonstration that we gave last year, which combines a whole series of different VR technologies. So this is a company in Hertfordshire, North England, north of London in England. And this was a particular gallery they set up to demonstrate to their clients. And in this particular scene, you can see they've got a 3D model of a church. They've got an animated video of that. And they've got a 3D virtual tour made with Matterport. And you can actually, you can see that's a photogrammetric model of that church that they made. And there's a whole bunch of assets there that, you know, explore that in more detail, including a walkthrough in Matterport and a video of the animation of the 3D model.
Brian,
yeah, sure.
If I can ask,
Yeah.
This is a 3D model inserted in a
in Frame.
In Frame, and
yeah.
but the environment is not photogrammetry.
What?
If I rebuild
the environment, right?
Right. Like a Matterport, for instance.
Yes, yes.
But inside Frame.
Yes, you can do that, and I'll show you that. Let me go back. So I've got a number of different examples here of different types of photogrammetric uses and models inside a frame. Okay, so what you're asking for is like a doll's house view or something like that. And that can be done. In fact, if I go to the next scene, this is as a 3D model made from made by a company called Meta Stage. Or I wouldn't say made by, a friend of mine photographed this. Mark Fink photographed his parents' house. He had a series of 360 spheres of that house. He then uploaded those to Meta Stage's site, which is the same kind of software that you get. There's a number of different tools out for doing this, and it's also similar to Matterport. They then made a 3D model. So if I go back a scene, you'll see here, sorry, there on that screen there, you can see an exploded view of the doll's house model, and there as well. In fact, that's what it looks like on Meta Real's site. So that's a video. Let's expand that. So this is how it would be in Meta Real. You know, you kind of move, as you know, that kind of feeling where you move from one scene to the next. Like that. So that's how it would look on Meta Real's site. And then if you go into, you can actually import the model or download the model. You can download the model. Whoops, back one, back two. You can download the model into, let's try that one. Just a moment. All right, I think I've hit the click button quite too many times there. I'll just, if I go forward, I can find it. No, I've lost it now. Where has it gone? Okay. There it is. Okay. So that's now the model in Frame. Okay, so you can see I'm in a gallery in Frame, like we were before. And I've taken that model that I got from as an object file from MetaReal Stage. They do a very low cost service where they'll take a model, like a bunch of 360 photographs, and they'll turn it into a model for you. I think they charge like $3 or $4 a photosphere, or even less. It's really inexpensive. And then they let you download that object file, and you can then load that into this environment. So this is rather crude because you collide with the walls. You're going through all the walls, right? But if you actually download it in as an environment within Frame, you can make it the walls so that you can't penetrate them. There's a mesh that stops you crashing through the walls. And I do have an example of that. I've just got to remember where I put it at the moment. If I go back a stage. There we go. I think this is it. No, that's the same one I was looking at. Anyway, I'll get to it in a minute. I'll find it for you. Yeah. I'm kind of whizzing around very fast. I don't usually go around this quickly, but I'm trying to give you a scope of all of the possibilities, really. Anyway, it is possible to make that an environment, and I think I do have that on my list. Let me see if I can find it for you. No.
Can you show some of the inner workings like you're showing right now?
Yeah, I can do. I'll do some of that in a minute. I just wanted to try and show Marco this actual, end product. But okay, there we go. Okay, so this is that same model I showed you before, but I've loaded it as an environment. So now it's created a mesh and you can't go through the walls, right? You see, I'm hitting that wall, I can't go any further. So as a result, I can't actually move around this space into the other rooms. So what you do then is you create what they call spawn spots where you can move between rooms. So I can create a spawn spot and then link it to a room, and there I am in the bedroom now. So that room is entirely sealed at the moment. Because I haven't done any work on trying to make these links, smooth in a sense. I can't go through the doors, but I can move around. So there's, it's not like the ideal solution, I would say, but I'm not a big fan of Doll's House views anyway. Matterport does a reasonable job. You can certainly create an environment like this, which is interesting. And as I say, with a bit more work, you could probably make it more accessible than I've got it at the moment. This was just a demo, really. Okay, but it is possible to create a load of 3D model in, and you can actually go into fly mode and go completely through the walls if you want to as well. So that's the kind of thing you can do with photogrammetry. So just to finish off very briefly now, I just wanted to show you a couple of other things you can do with photogrammetry, which I think are a bit more interesting than Doll's House views. So let's get out of the Doll's House view. There we go. So I showed you the South Mims, North Mims Church. What you can do, if you can find it on Sketchbook, there's a huge number of resources, free 3D models on Sketchbook. I did a virtual tour of Death Valley, rather like Scott's got actually. And what I've done is I found a 3D LiDAR scan of part of Death Valley. So I've loaded that into Frame. And as you'll see, this is a high level view of this Badwater Drive here in the foreground. This is Golden Canyon going up to Cathedral and then up to Zabriskie Point over here. And this is a 3D scan, which again, if I go into fly mode, I could dip down, and I won't do it at the moment. At the moment, it's not loaded as an environment because it won't map this kind of thing. It's a bit too cumbersome for it. But I've loaded it as a 3D model. And provided I put it at the right level, I won't crash through the walls of the mountains, but I can do that. So what I've done instead to navigate this is I've created a series of go-to buttons. So you can just go to Zabriskie Point, step back from Zabriskie Point and actually have a look. This is a high-level view from Zabriskie Point. You can go to Furnace Creek, the inn there. There's a view of the inn. Again, this is a sort of drone level view, but it is a 3D model and it's inside frame. And then you can attach assets and things to the various parts of the model. So actually I've got a view from Golden Canyon. And then you can actually get a feel of what it's like to fly over that model. And there are a couple of other models I managed to download from Sketchbook. And then I also have integrated some of my own 360 in here. So this is a 360 view inside Golden Canyon. And this is another model, I think, of the artist palette that I downloaded from Sketchbook. And again, you can kind of do a flyover, and then you could add your own resources to links to your virtual tour and things like that on it. So there's a lot of things you could do with that. It's a bit fiddly dealing with models. If you can download models and make them environments, that's the best method. But there are size limitations because Frame won't accept huge models. So I could talk a lot more about some of that if people are interested. So that's just a quick overview of some of the things you could do with Frame really in 360. It's not going to be like a totally flexible environment. It's got limitations because of the fact that it's designed actually to host a number of users at once. And we'll see that in a minute. I'll let you join me in a moment. But first, let me just hop out and see if anybody got any questions up to now, I think. Is anybody still there?
What about some of the inner workings, your settings and things like that for the assets?
Right. Well, there's a huge array of things. I could just whiz through. You'll hear there's also, I put bird sound in the background here, which gives that. So the settings are, I mean, the best way for me to do that, I think, if I just go into a blank frame and show you how I assemble some items, and then you'll begin to see how it works. That's probably the best method. That's what I do with the students.
Right,
so if I
Brian,
yes, go on.
You say that there are limitations about the size of the models you use.
Yes.
What type of limitation?
Well, the size of the model, the number of textures and so forth. It has an optimization part, so it will try to make a model work by lowering the size of the textures, and it's quite effective, and it will also build a mesh if it can. It used to have a limit of 15 megabytes for model sizes, which is pretty small. Yeah. And also you have to download a particular type of model. It's a GLB model. That's the file format. If you can't get a GLB, you'd have to convert them to .glb. And if you get a model larger, and I've used models twice that size, the optimization within it will crush, the textures, and it will obviously reduce the resolution slightly. But in many cases, it does work. So it's not an absolute limit. I think I've managed to put models of probably 30, maybe even 40 megabytes in under certain circumstances. Sometimes it'll do it. Sometimes it'll spit them out and say, I can't do that. So it's not an absolute number. And those are the main features, really. If it's a very flat surface like a map, it very often can't map a walking path, so it won't be usable as environment. So then you just download the model as a model, and you have to suffer with the limitations of it only being a model. If it's just a model in an environment, you don't have a mesh, and therefore you can crash through the model, into as if it wasn't there, kind of thing. And also it's more difficult to
but at your knowledge, there is not a system that is allowing to have a multi-resolution model.
What do you mean by? Oh no, VR
So
multi-resolution.
when
You're
you
talking
zoom,
about virtual tours, aren't you?
yes, something like virtual tour, but based on the 3D model.
Well, they're two totally different things. A 360 virtual tour with multi-resolution has got all these thousands of tiles, tens of thousands
Yes,
of tiles.
that is the pixels. I mean
Right.
the triangle of the mesh, something
Right.
that is increasing the number of triangles when you zoom in or you go.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't answer that at the moment. I'd have to come back to you. It's a very specific question, and I don't know the answer, to be honest.
Because I see the major limitation of this type of environment is when you go to photogrammetry, is the capability to use high resolution.
Yes, it's not designed as that. You know, this is a tool for, I mean, you have to understand that anything that's a 3D environment is very heavy on computing power.
Yeah.
And if you're going to use it as a true VR environment in which, you know, you can actually enter this, we can have everybody in this room moving around as avatars, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then each of those avatars could actually be wearing a 3D headset. There's extreme limitations on resolution and size of files in any system at the moment that does that, because VR headsets and desktop systems generally have got a limited amount of power to deal with that. I mean, it's very heavy computing power. So the numbers of people that could be in such an environment is very often limited to 50. This will go higher. If you go to AltSpace VR, Engage, all of those systems have got, you know, similar kinds of limitations. So it's not, you know, it's not the perfect, if you're just interested in high resolution photogrammetry models, this probably isn't the place for you. This is a combination of a metaverse, a world in which you can move around and share. And that's what it's built for. It's
Brian,
built for multiple users accessing at once.
Brian, there was in one of the 3D environments that you showed, there was a table and the chairs looked like they had kind of wrapped onto the table. Is that a result of the translation going over to Frame, or was that in the original?
That's the problem with Doll's House views in general. That's the whole problem. Even Matterport or any of those systems, you cannot, you know, all they're doing is putting together a series of steps between 360 spheres. And so they do that kind of quickly, so you don't see that happening. You move, you know, it blurs and you're gone. But if you actually lay that 3D model that you generate from any of these systems, unless it's a very high resolution model that people have gone in with expensive equipment and got all the angles, you're going to get dead zones. You're going to get these spots where there's occlusion. And if you actually create a 3D model from those, you know, the Matterport or whatever, you'll see those occlusions when you walk around, and you'll see furniture flattened. And there's some tools that have given you the ability to try and build within that a 3D model that resolves that, and it is possible, but it's a lot of manual work, and it's, to be honest, in my view, it's not worth the effort. But that's the way it is. So Doll's House views are very imperfect wherever you look at them, if you really study them.
So to build a video game quality,
yeah, if you've got to get into a whole new technology using ultra, you know, Unreal or something like that, you're in a total different ball game. And the one time I was able to do a really nice 3D model is this room, because it's square, so there's no problem, with very little problem with occlusion and walking around. This was a 360 I did of the Jackson Pollock studio, upstate New York, which actually I sold a license to a company who was doing a 3D virtual tour of it, and they actually then went and scanned the room themselves, but they used my view as part of the video tour because it was like the live studio, whereas they scanned it and remade the model and did their own thing.
Just the chair can be a problem if you go.
Yeah, the chair is a problem, and you'll see that. But actually, the way this is just a 360 photo at the moment.
Okay.
If I go into, I've actually created it as a 3D model. Now I've got to remember where I put that.
Okay.
Hang on.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, like trying to jump around inside your brain. This is, hang on.
Your other brain, right?
Yeah, your other brain. Okay, here it is. So this is the thing about, they made an app called, a VR app called Tracing Paint. And I think they got the idea from my 360 photo, to be honest. But they did a really nice job. They went in and did a photogrammetry scan of it and so forth. And then they just tagged my VR on the end of it saying, well, this is how it is today. They tried to recreate it as it was when Jackson Pollock painted in it. That's why they made a model. They then completely fabricated that model. But
so when you say fabricate, do you mean like synthetic versus?
yes, it was
realistic?
synthetic. It wasn't the real thing, because what they wanted to do was, when Jackson Pollock used this room, it didn't have all this plasterboard on the walls originally. You could see through the cracks in the panels. They took all of this stuff down. They just wanted the physical dimensions of the space and the windows, and then they recreated it as an artificial model. And then they set their video inside that, most of it. But what I did was, I'd have to go to my website probably to do this so I can remember where I put it. But I actually did, using one of these tools, I made a kind of doll's house view of it. If I'm trying to remember where it is now. And because it's a square room, you can get away with it, and it looks very realistic. And I've got to remember where that link is. I don't think it's here. No, it's just that one. I'd have to go to my website. Let's try that. Here we go. Okay, so this is my website. Here is the room. Okay, so on my website, I've got the files. I got the 3D files I created the model with. And so you can actually walk around this space now in 3D, okay? Can you see that? It's not clear, it's taking its time on. I'm just looking at my monitor. You're seeing jumps. Yeah, okay, you're getting a sense. On my monitor, it's very smooth.
Brian, what did you use? What did you use to build that model?
It's a real kludge, actually. What I did was I took the KR, I use Pano Tour Pro still, and I took the KR Pano files, and I got some code. There's a bunch of sites you can that do some work on this. And you put in the coordinates and so forth for the depth map. And so I was able to make a depth map model of that room. As I say, on my computer,
the lamp on the top is a problem.
Yeah, you can see exactly, and that is the problem you get with doll's house views everywhere.
Yeah,
I mean, this because of the shape of the room, you barely notice it. But if you go towards that chair, hang on a minute. I think you can see at that point, if I zoom right in on that chair, you can begin to see the distortion, because it's not, it's not, I've not got a 3D map of that chair built into the model. So I'm just seeing it crushed. But for a square room, it's great. Not square, any rectangular space, or anything that's a simple polygon, you can quite easily create a model that will map the textures of the room onto the model, and therefore it will look real. Once you get a lot of furniture, odd shapes, everything else, you'd have to build a 3D model to map the textures onto, and that becomes a lot of work. That's why doll's houses aren't really 3D models in most cases.
That's like all those paint cans behind you, right?
Yeah, exactly. You can see that. You can see that. That's just a. You can just see that's a photograph, not actually. Yeah. Oh. The only thing that you can see in that room is, if you look at the window, you'll see those lights suddenly go very weird. If I take a right angle. And again, I'm moving around very smoothly on my computer. It's coming through very jittery on yours. I can see that. So those are the issues really with 3D models. And let's go back to Frame. So what I was going to do was, if I just very briefly, I could, oh no, it's the other scene, hang on. I could show you an empty room and put some assets in it, and you'll just see how it works. Okay.
Ryan, how is this different than, you know, like you and Marco were talking about with the game engine?
Well, it's not different in principle. It's just that the tools in a game engine are very much about 3D modeling. I mean, you know, and there's a whole, you know, industry. I mean, to design and develop stuff in game engines, you know how expensive and costly and resource intensive that is. All I've shown you today, I'm not a programmer. I'm just a photographer who likes to fool around with websites and computers as well. And I've been able to do all you've seen today myself by the tools I'm just about to show you. If you want to do stuff in a game engine, you've got a whole different ball game. And, you know, you can spend your life learning how to use that if you wish. I don't.
No, but the 3D engine, the 3D game are not on internet, are on the computer. And,
that's right.
And you have to have a very powerful graphics.
Exactly. Exactly my point. Yeah. But the advantage of this, and this is the point, this is, you know, what you see in a headset or in a game, a final game has been, you know, thousands of hours of work reduced down into and kind of condensed and crystallized. This is an open free environment. As I said, it's a completely different kind of application for a different purpose. And you're not going to be able to achieve what you can achieve with a game engine with this. So as long as you understand that, that's fine. So this is an empty gallery. It's one of many environments you can have. And, you know, if I just show you briefly how some of the tools work. So they've kind of tried to simplify it rather than having all these drop-down menus. There's this little menu bar at the bottom you can see. So if I turn on this edit button here, this pen, I can then add an asset. I can add an image. Supposing I'm just going to recreate that photogrammetry room as an example. I can look at my own files for images. I can take a picture of myself or something. And this is a great tool. You use the image search. You can go to the web. So I'm going to put in, if I can remember how to spell it, photogrammetry. This is how I did it on the room. So you can just search on the web for an image that you want to use. Or you can use your own, obviously. Here we go. There's a bunch. It doesn't like PNG files, this, but it sometimes shows them even so. I can't find the one I used before. It doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to pick this one here, Google Maps 3D. So I'm going to try and upload that. See if it may not. Yeah, it should be. It's the right size. Okay, so that's the asset. You see, I can move that asset around. I can turn on a button that says snap to surface. So if I click on this wall, it's going to put it on the wall, because one of the things you'll find in a 3D environment is you see something, you think you've placed it, but it's actually floating in space. This makes sure it's actually pinned to the wall. I turn that off, and then I can actually unlock it. I can then expand it using this scaling button on the left, or I can just drag the corner of it and scale it up like that. So I've placed that asset on the wall. I might want to just move it up a bit. I then lock it so that it can't be moved. I've got all these other features, which I don't want to use at the moment. I could spin it if I wanted to. I could make it always face the camera so that as I move around the room, which isn't a good thing, it's actually hidden behind the wall. So I'm going to turn that off for the moment. You can make it zoomable. So if somebody clicks on it, they can zoom into it like that. Okay, you can zoom out. There we go. But the most useful thing is you can then add a link. So that link can be to another frame, to a website, to a scene, which is a kind of a slide within a frame, to a notification, or to a hotspot, which you can have elsewhere in the room. So you could make them jump to another part of the room. This, perhaps I don't want to do anything, or I might want to put a web link in. I would just type that in here, whatever I wanted to do. So that's basically how you deal with sort of images or many of the assets and placing them. Okay, so there's other kinds of assets. We talked a lot about models. So you can go for a 3D model. Hang on. You can see that? No. As I'm seeing the video menus over the sidebar menu, but let me see if I can place it so you can see it. So you'll see here it says browse Sketchfab. So you can go into Sketchfab. You need to have an account, which I already have. So I'm going to log into my account. Accept. And then you can just search on Sketchfab. So say I wanted to do, I'm going to do the globe. This is something I did earlier. Globe Theatre in London. There's a really nice model of that, I know. But, you know, you can just search and see what you can find. Okay, funny enough, well, I'll pick that one. You can have a look at the size of it on Sketchfab just to check that it's going to be in the ballpark. And it's usually, they only show the 3D downloadable ones. So this is a GLB model and it's only 1 megabyte, so that's going to be no problem. So there we go. So I'm just going to say import. And then I don't even need to optimize that. It's quite small enough. So I'm just going to load it quickly. Okay, so there's that asset. I've brought that in. I can move it around. I can try to snap it to the floor. It doesn't always work. Sometimes it goes through the floor, but usually it works. And I can increase the size of it then if I want to. Move that back a bit. There we go. Try and make it even bigger if you like. And then just lock it into position. Again, I'm not going to add any links to that. I don't want to make it downloadable or anything else. So that'll do. So that is now a model of the Globe Theatre, and you can then go inside that model. And I've got a better one. I found an earlier one that I've got, which is really nice. But there are millions of assets on Sketchfab that you can download and use. Anyway, so that's the principle of it. Anyway, you get the idea. There's a ton of other assets you can add, and I won't do them all. I'll just show you that in principle, you can add an image, you can add a video, you can add a 360 sphere. You can add 360 video, but it's very small. There's a limitation of 500 megabytes on total video storage in a frame. And you'll find with 360 video, that's very quickly used up. So it does work, but it's very resource intensive. So you can add audio, text, shapes, 3D models. You can put polls in, you know, you can have question and answers. It's great for teaching. You can have PDF voice zones. You can have areas where if there are people in the room, they can only talk to each other. Spawn spots are like hotspots where people can move around an environment. You can have a whiteboard, streaming screen. There's lots of fancy effects, you know, like particle effects. You can add a web browser, which is a live web browser. So you can actually browse the web live in a classroom or in a room. You can have a web screenshot, which is rather like the image placement I've shown you. You can pull in an image from a website and pop it on your wall. You've got a live news section. I don't know why you want that, but you have. And you've got an inventory of some models and assets that they give you. So those are the kind of things you can place within an environment. And then the actual environment itself, you actually have a range of environments. We're looking at a gallery environment here. And you can actually, if I go into this sidebar menu, frame settings, I'm going to take a risk here and just show you. This is what's called a small gallery environment. This is the range of environments they provide. So something's called Event Horizon, which is like a spaceship. There's an auditorium, a garden, a kind of mid-century house, a modern store, a shop, a kind of opera house, convention center, an office, an expo center, a hall, a small gallery, a large kind of university hall building. There's a beach resort, a campus, a school, a solarium, an office, an atrium, an outdoor theatre, an island, a lounge, a floating hall, team suite, gallery, and an empty model where you bring in your own environments. So I hope I can get back to where I was, otherwise this model's going to change rather weirdly. And come in the small gallery. Okay, that should be good. So I'm going to leave that as it is for the moment because I don't want to destroy this. So that's kind of how it works. And then within the environments, you have control over a whole bunch of other options. You can have, it's got actually international text translation. You can actually have speech to text in multiple languages, which is fantastic. I think if you need that, especially with the IVRPA, we could actually have text translation of a chat. You can enable flying, which I've talked about now and I haven't shown you before, but you can actually enable flying, which means that you can actually then go up and above the limitation of the ground. You can actually get up into the space. I mean, this is not the right environment for flying in, the others are, but you can actually, you know, you can go above. Normally you're tied to the ground, basically. With flying, you can actually go through the walls and everything. And then they've got some basketball game in there. I don't know what that's for.
Brian,
yes.
What about the frame compared to what is doing Meta?
With what?
With Meta, Facebook has announced.
Meta. Yeah, Meta has something called Horizon Worlds. Well, that's really primarily designed for Oculus. Frame is WebXR, so it should theoretically work on a range of devices. But it's the similar principle and probably the similar limitations. I've looked in Horizon Worlds, and I don't think you've got anywhere near the flexibility in the tools from what I can tell, but I haven't looked lately because it does keep changing, so I couldn't be sure about that. I don't happen to like the kind of environments, and also I'm not that keen in mixing with a bunch of people from Facebook. This has got a lot more control. You can see all the permissions control here. I can limit what you can do and what visitors can do. At the moment, all the editing switched just at admins. That's me and anybody else I give an admin privilege. Anybody can interact, anybody can view, anybody can speak, anybody can use the camera. Only the admins can switch photospheres and calendar invites, for example. That's all changeable. I could make that, you know, members or admins, and you can have member groups, admin groups, and so forth. So it's got a lot of permission controls. There's even a password control. So there's a lot more, I think, a lot more flexibility in it. It's really a question of whether you're looking to join Horizon Worlds in the world of Facebook, and whoever. If you've ever been on any of those kind of environments, and you get a lot of wackos, and there's a lot of tools to stop people like that, but it's a question of what you're looking for, really. And I don't think you've got anywhere near the ability to create that you have in this, from what I could see. The only other tool that's similar, but I haven't kept up with it, is that Firefox, Mozilla has a thing called Hubs, which is kind of similar to this. And that's also available. But again, I didn't find it. This is under constant development. Hubs is kind of static. It's not really developed much. This is being, and the free access to this is pretty amazing. I mean, you can buy a higher level of access for more visitors and so forth, but this is pretty good as a free tool. And
Yes,
Hubs is free.
The question is that, for instance, in Italy, Meta is doing advertising on the TV
Yeah,
for meta environment of the future. So it depends what is becoming the standard of on the market.
well, yeah.
I know.
Also, Meta shares just went down 50%. Meta's got a huge problem, and there's a big question mark here. It's been in the news this week, is that Meta currently is losing 3.45 million a quarter on its Meta Labs project. In other words, Quest and Horizon and all those things. They're losing 15 billion a year annualized at the moment, and their ad revenue on Facebook has tanked 50% due to TikTok and other apps. So they're in a real crunch now, and there's a lot of question marks as whether they're going to start cutting back all their development on Meta and Meta Labs and Horizon Worlds and everything. So I don't think you can, it's a question of what you're looking for as well, and what you want to do. And it may be the tool for you, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily going to be the future either. Who knows? But this is for a teaching tool. This is fantastic. I wouldn't teach.
Google is was not the best search engine for internet, but today everyone is using Google. So this is my question.
No, I understand that, but also, Facebook's revenue model is going down the tubes at the moment. So, but it's a question of what you're looking for. I'm not saying that this is a platform that's going to be used by the whole world. That's not the point. If you want a tool that you can bring people into, that's what it's for. If you want a tool that you can sell and say, this is the future to everybody, this is probably maybe not the tool. I don't know. It's all a question of what you want to do with it.
Okay.
Anyway, those are the kind of things you can do with it. So before I let you come in, I've spent an hour talking about it now. I want to give you a chance to look at it. Any quick questions?
Yeah, I've got a quick question. Can you have layers? So say that Marco logs in, he can only see the west half of the gallery, and Lauren logs in, he can only see the floor. Is that capable yet?
No.
Okay.
Why would you want to do that? I can't
just
use.
Yeah, just it seems like this is kind of a storyboard, and if you have one gallery, maybe
it's a meeting tool. It's really a meeting tool. That's its primary function.
Okay.
I think that's its primary function. And if the 3D worlds thing, it again, if you've ever been in alt space or any of those 3D worlds in Quest, they're all got huge limitations.
Well, they're developing.
Yeah. Slowly.
Yeah.
What's the price? Brian, are you familiar with the pricing model?
This is free up to, you can have 3 frames per email account with up to 15 users, and then there's an overflow of what they call, I forget what they call it now, but like spectator mode. So you could have 30 people in at once. To be honest, when we ran it WebXR Day, we never got more than about 30, and that was advertising it to the whole membership. If you want to go above that, then there are 2 tiers. I think if you want to get up to 50 users in a space, it's something like $50 a month. And then they've got a higher tier. If you go to the website, which I'll show you, there's only 2 or 3 tiers. And one thing I can say about this company, and the guy who's developed, the key guy who developed, he's got a big team, but the developer is a guy called Gabe Baker. They're super responsive. They've got great support. They've got a great Discord, and they've been actively developing this now for a couple of years or more, I think. And it's tied to the sister company, or the big company that owns it is Virbela, if you've heard of that, which is also part of, or has been bought up by the online realtor company, which I forget the name of for the moment. So, they've got some substantial amount of development behind it, and it is well supported. And it's, they do have a long-term goal. I think, more of a goal than perhaps Meta have in some sense. Any other questions, or do we try to let people inside some of this space?
I'd say probably let them inside.
Let's let everybody in. Well, the best place to come in, I think, is the campus, because there's a lot to see in there. Then you can spin off if you want to other places. There's a go-to menu here, which will have some things in it within the space that you can go
put a
to.
link in? You want to put a link in the chat?
Yeah, it's okay. I'll do that. It's the easiest thing. It's in the chat. There's the chat. Here we go. Chat. Okay, so be careful when you come in, because you're going to start getting feedback if you open up the microphone, if you want to talk. Either that, or we could just leave all the microphones off in Frame, not turn them on. And if you talk, I'll hear you through Zoom anyway. So that would be the safest way. Don't activate your microphones in Frame, and then we should be good. So here's the link. If you've got a Quest headset, you can go in using that as well.
Brian, can I access this through my iPad?
You can, but this space that I've built particularly is very heavy and it won't really work on the iPad. Frame works as long as they're sort of light frames. I could give you a light frame that you might be able to get into, if that would help.
Have you put the link in there yet?
I put it in the chat, yeah. The trouble with this is I've really maxed out the number of assets I put in this room. When you come in, if you can just sort of sign up and give a name, that would be great. If you want to use a portable device, it's tricky.
Yeah, Brian, don't worry, but that's fine.
Okay, I just watch us in here.
So,
I can give you, talk to me afterwards, and I can give you access to space that might work on an iPad. But this is best done on a desktop, really. Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
Cool. So I can see Jim, Colette, and if you're a guest, if you go over to that little tricolor button on the top right menu, you can actually sign in and give your email address and name. It will let you do that. You can name your avatar, and you can then if you want to waste time, you can customize your avatar, make them look human. I think you can see mine, so it looks vaguely human. It's only a half body. They have actually implemented some common avatar level called, I think it's the real or something. I forget the name of it at the moment. So you can bring in other avatars that are sort of higher quality than these. So you move around. If you're in a desktop, just use the arrow keys to move around. If you're in Zoom, you know how to move around. You should just use one of the buttons, I think. And then if you want to jump to a particular spawn spot in the space, you can just use the drop-down go-to menu. And there's about 9 different places within this campus that you can jump to. And then some of the hotspots in the site will take you off-site. I think I showed you the one to my website. It's in the how to pavilion. There's a link to my teaching sites. And if you go to the big, in the center of the site, there's a big Go to Expo sign. If you click on that, you'll go to an expo site that I set up for a conference we never had online. And there's a whole environment there you can explore as well. I'll go back to the campus for now. So have a look around, and you can speak to each other if you're all in the same room. Well, actually through Zoom anyway, or you can speak to me, or you can ask questions.
So how does this thing move with your mouse?
No, use your arrow keys. It's best.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they
that's
did used to have a mouse thing, but that works better in, I think, in Quest. I think with the arrow keys are the best thing to move around with, really. And you can
Okay.
use two together and so forth. But what you'll notice is on your computer, it should be relatively smooth. What you've been seeing in my Zoom has been very jumpy because that's coming through Zoom. But once you're in the environment, and this applies in a headset as well, you've got, you know, very smooth motion around the space. For those who are not inside, I'll just give them a little tour. So you can go, there's a rooftop view, so you can see the whole environment. You'll see the 360 sphere I've got from a French chateau in the outside of this. So you'll see in this environment, we've got actually 4 pavilions with various posters and presentations in from the IVRPA website. There's an amphitheater at the back, which you can go to from the go-to menu. And then there's the kind of atrium building I showed you before. So I can go to the amphitheater. There's an amphitheater here. This is actually a live website, so you can actually, I can scroll on that, you can see. I can actually go to, I could use this in a teaching environment or any other presentation and actually go through some of the assets of Frame. It's got a great learning center, tells you how to use all the assets, the navigation, the features.
I'm sorry. I did want to ask just one question. If you
Yeah.
can put your own environment in there.
Sorry?
You can put your own environment in
You
here, right?
can, yeah. I said with the caveat that if you can build a 3D model yourself, you can bring it in, or you can find 3D models on Sketchfab or other places as well. With a limitation that they've got to be reasonably small in terms of their triangle and their weight. So really what that means is probably nothing more than about 40, you might get away with 50 megabytes if it compresses it. But it's got to be a kind of contained model, and it's got to have, you know, a navigable space within it. If it's a kind of like I've done in some examples with the Death Valley or some islands in the Azores, some of them work and some of them don't if it's a very large LiDAR based model. But general 3D models usually work, and you know, it's obviously got to be something that you want to have a reasonable amount of space in to move around in if it's a model.
Very cool.
Because it will build a mesh around the walls, so that you know. Here are some of the environments.
Yeah, I do see the value in an event like this, like a conference or something.
Sorry, Colette, you're very muted. Could you speak directly in the mic? Because it's a bit difficult to hear you.
I just said I could see the value of this for an event.
Right. Oh, here's the pricing page for those who are asking. So it's free, 3 frames, 15 users per frame, all of the features. There's no advertising anywhere on the site, by the way, even if it's free. Founders, $50 a month, you get the free plan, and you can have up to 50 users in a meeting or in a space. to be frank, I think for, unless you're teaching a large class or something, you might need that. I think they would give possibly some larger use for educational users. When I was using it last year, they were very gracious and they actually gave me access with up to 40 or 50 users, which I've managed to maintain on some of my frames. They don't know that, I think, but they still have it. And then there's a founders where you get everything and up to 75 users with an onboarding guide for 100 a month. So they're not exorbitant. I think other than that, I think, oh, yeah, they've got higher levels now. I hadn't seen this before. They've got a premium membership for 200 a month, where you can have 100 users, ability to change the logo. In other words, you can brand everything on the site, which isn't a huge thing because you can put your own branding on most things here anyway. And ongoing communications about new features. Well, I think the big thing there is 100 users, which is pretty high actually. And then they'll do something called Metaverse as a Service, where they'll build you custom environments and digital twins and so forth, but you know, with the limitations that you've seen really. So they have, as I said, if you're at all interested in this, talk to Gabe Baker. He's excellent, and he will, you know, he'll be very open to discussion with you. Okay.
Where does Frame see this whole project going? What do they see as their future?
Well, you know, do you know Virbella?
No.
Okay, Virbella is a 3D world, somewhat like this. It's more like a game engine quality. It's slightly higher quality. It's still not real, you know, real world feel like you get in a game engine perhaps, but you get whole body avatars. And you can have large numbers of people in meetings. The way they deal with that actually is they kind of virtualize a bunch of the participants so you don't see them except by sort of, you know, shadows, and or well, they're there, but they're not quite as clear as all of them. But anyway, it's a bigger platform, but it's super expensive. I mean, we did actually talk to them at one point trying to do the conference in there when we thought about doing an online conference, and it was going to cost like $15,000 or something. So they do sell these environments to universities. So, you know, it's like a higher grade version of this, but its web features are very limited. It's primarily, you have to download a fairly heavyweight app on your computer, and its VR features are severely limited. So they built Frame partly, it was being developed separately, and then it got bought up by Virbella. And Frame offers that kind of VR world application, which they don't really have fully developed because their app's too heavy and, you know, too more game-like. And it also, so it interfaces, so they link their two worlds together. So people who want to move into a certain thing, they can mix and match between Virbella and Frame. So Virbella's been around for quite a few years, 10 years maybe, because it was like it's like a Second Life kind of thing almost, but you know, high quality. And it got bought up by this virtual real estate company now called something, I forget the name of it now. You'll see it around all over the place. Basically, people have become real estate agents without having to have an office or anything, and they, you know, it's one of these online services. But this company, you know, that's their primary function now. So they own Virbella, and it also works for them as a tool. They use it with their worldwide network of realtors and so forth, and sell it. So they have a long-term view, I suppose, of having virtual real estate as well as real estate. And that's kind of how those two worlds fit together to them in their mind. So Frame is, you know, there seems to have been very well supported by them. up to now. Who knows where we are in the future? I don't. Any other questions? Or anything people want to see?
Just a quick comment. I haven't put my headset on for, I'm not sure how long.
Right, me
But
too.
when I did, I'm faced with the screen to set up a new Meta account, which I already have.
I haven't done that yet, yeah.
It's, you know, it's sort of like, well, I wanted to just jump right in and
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
they just, you know, that was that whole thing about Meta forced everybody to use their Facebook accounts. And now they've turned around and said, no, you don't, you can have your own account. We're going to make you not use your Facebook account. So they completely did a complete 180 on that. And I haven't logged in lately myself. Just one or two words about using this in Meta. This particular campus site, it does work in Quest 2. It's right on the edge of usability. It does work okay, but if I were to put any more, I had to pull some resources out of it because it was just too heavy. You know, I had a lot of videos in here, and you really, I mean, I probably got 10 videos, I forget. And I pulled out a lot of the photospheres because they weren't necessary for what I was doing in this particular campus environment. So you have to watch, and there's a tool on the sidebar which tells you about performance, and you can see how, you know, I don't know if it's right at the bottom here on the screen. Yeah, this is saying performance rating 58 frames a second. You have 96 assets which might impact performance, so it's on the edge performance wise with the Quest 2, this particular campus environment, but the other rooms are probably better that I've done.
So Brian, would you solve that by dividing this frame in half so you have 2 frames?
Yeah, well, they've added a lot of tools so you can duplicate frames, which you didn't used to be able to do. You can share them and give them to other people to mix and do their own thing with. And yes, I didn't bother, but you could break it down. You could basically put a link to a second scene. No, scenes are all in the same frame, so it's the same thing. Yeah, you could create a secondary frame basically and have, you know, fewer assets in one than the other.
But you only have 3 on the free version, right?
On the free version, yeah, but that's per email account. I shouldn't say this. I have managed to generate 5 email accounts. So I mean, I already had 3 or 4. I've got one with my website, my own, my Gmail, my IVRPA account. And then I kind of, because I have a website account, I just create email accounts as well. So I just got greedy last year when I was doing this because I thought they might limit it. And I just grabbed, so I have 15 frames for free. But don't tell everybody.
So if you went up to the $50 per month,
Yes.
I saw you only get 1 more frame. Is that?
No. Oh, no, hang on a minute. Let me have a look. It's behind me, isn't it? No, you get, no, you don't get any more frames. You just get one that will hold 50 users. And none of the other plans give you more frames until, yeah, it's weird. You know, they haven't kind of given you lots more frames in any of the plans. I think that's something you'd talk to them about, because I know there's one guy out there called Edu Metaverse. I don't know if you ever see him on LinkedIn. There's this guy who's developed, like me, like he's got about 20 or 30 frame environments, which I don't know if he excels any, but he purportedly makes available a fee to schools. So, and he does a lot of design work in them, and he's got tons of them. So he must have come to some arrangement. And I think that's what you'd have to do, really. You'd have to talk to them and negotiate a deal, because none of these plans really add frames particularly, which is odd. But as I say, you know, I found at the moment just having multiple email addresses is the way around that problem.
And did you also say that you licensed that room to someone? You sold a license to them?
No, not me. No.
No.
I said there's a guy called. If you go on LinkedIn, look up Edu Metaverse or just Google it. There's a guy using Frame with a company name called Edu Metaverse, and he's got tons of frames which are not publicly available. And I believe he must have got some deal with them because he's licensing them. And I did talk to Frame about this. They will let you charge, licensed use of your frames. Because I asked them if we had a conference and we charged a fee, would you have a problem with that? And they said, no, it's fine. So I think it's more about if you have multiple frames, you probably have to negotiate your own package with them.
Thank you.
Okay. The questions seem to have come to an end. Any more last question? Otherwise, I'll hand it over to Scott and see if anybody has any general questions, IVRPA questions.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay.
Can I turn off the screen share now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. If I can, oh, here we go, stop sharing. Okay.
Okay, so any other comments or questions from the audience? Okay.
Any other
I
IVR?
had one.
Go
Can you hear
ahead.
me?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm on a crappy hotel Wi-Fi, so I don't share
Oh,
my image,
good.
so
Yeah, right.
just audio. No, I really like the format. I think it's a good idea to have a general topic and bring people in to I don't know, learn something, and then also I don't know. I enjoy this now.
Thank you.
One thing we do need is we are in need of an election manager for the upcoming elections. Is anybody willing to step forward on that?
Would you want to say a little bit about what's involved so that people understand that?
Scott, you want to, didn't you, I think you put something together the other day for that, didn't you?
I was on the verge of doing that, so not yet. You actually have done that, so perhaps you can fill us
Let
in.
me go into the website real quick because it's in the bylaws.
I think we probably should do a mailing to the members.
Oh yeah, we definitely should, but I figured
Yeah.
that while we have people here, let's
Oh,
let me
sure.
throw the question out there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Come on. But for the most part, it's managing the election, and we need somebody who's not on the board or running for the board to do that with, and which we were going to use Election Buddy to handle the actual balloting and what have you. And so it's more
So
or
the
less
election manager has to just kind of do the mailings and tell people what's
oversee
happening, oversee it, but it's handled by Election Buddy.
Okay, let's see here about. Let's see here. Bylaws. I'm getting to it here. I think my connection today is running real slow because it took a while before the connection, the link. It took a while for the link to get here for that Brian sent for his frame.
Oh, really?
Anyways, the election monitor oversees the election and monitors it. That's pretty much the long and short of it.
Yeah, and then announces the result, I think.
Is there anybody I can we can get into doing this. We're not asking you to serve on the board. Okay.
No takers at the moment. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we do need somebody, so I guess we're going to have to do a member mailing or something.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get that out here like next week sometime.
Yeah. In regarding this recording, if you
I'll
can
as soon as it
send-
gets done
tell me
processing.
where it is, and I'll process it. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, yeah,
I
I
have a
have it going on my
question.
computer and I'll go ahead and I'll
Brian?
you send me a link as to where you want me to put it, Brian.
Well, I mean, you put it in the BOD folders before, didn't you?
Yeah. I'll
Yeah, if you put it there, I'll
put
do the topping and tailing if that's okay, unless Scott wants to.
Okay, yeah, no, I'll put it in the
I'll do it.
I'll put it on the G drive.
Yeah, I'll tidy it up and then I'll just post it as a link to you. You can distribute to members and so.
Okay. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, well, we got
All right.
about an hour and a half out of it.
Are we going to have a member meeting next month? It's December, isn't it? Oh, it's November, but it's
November or
Thanksgiving.
December. I think we
Thanks.
talked about not
Right.
doing anything for those 2 months.
Because of the
And-
because
yeah.
of the elections.
Yeah, with the election. So I think we were talking about coming back in January.
Right.
I just one thing, I did contact Thomas Wallman, because he was saying he may
Right.
have some interesting news. Because he's getting some funding, when we did this thing on WebXR last year, he talked and showed his product called Jackknife, which was really interesting for 3D. I mean, Marco's asking about gaming. This gave you a level of control in creating 3D videos, WebXR based as well.
What was
That
it? What was
way,
the other?
way beyond what we've got seen today. Anyway, he's got funding now to develop that tool.
What was the other app that he was developing?
It's Jackknife.
No, I thought it was something else besides.
Well, it used
Jackknife.
to be called Liquid Cinema.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
And then it became Jackknife. Anyway, he's
Ah.
got funding, and he said that he would probably be able to do some kind of presentation in the early part of next year, February, March, maybe. So I told him that as I'm not going to be on the board next year, that he should contact Scott or you, or
Okay.
I also asked him to let me know as well, but he will update you when he's got something to show. But that could be really interesting.
Why did he change the name from Liquid Cinema to
God
Jack-
knows. I thought it was a horrible choice of name.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, maybe they'll change it again. He's
Yeah,
got
I was going to
funding
say
now.
that doesn't mean that they're not going to keep Jackknife.
No, it could be an interim name. Yeah, but he had a lot of money from Meta to do that video they did,
Oh,
that-
okay. Yeah, I remember that's why he was shooting for something like that.
Well, they developed that whole the Magic of Flight VR
Right.
experience, which is on the Meta site. It's a great WebXR experience if anybody's not seen it. With this development tool that they've been working on their own, which was based on Liquid Cinema, our next version. And now he's got, I think, kind of venture funding to develop that further.
So that's part of that 15 billion loss that
Who
they're
knows?
incurring.
I don't know where or what. It's not necessarily Meta. I'm not sure if it is or not.
Woo. That's a lot of money.
I didn't say he got that much. No, I don't think he's got that much.
A piece of that at least.
Maybe.
Okay, guys.
Okay.
So we'll get an email out for the next meeting, which will be January.
Okay.
In the meantime, we got elections coming up and holidays.
Yep.
Everybody be
Okay.
kind to each other.
Take care.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Thank
Bye
you.